I'm going to apologize in advance that I very nicely had an unexpected lengthening of my trip to D.C. I'm out here with my son with the Constitution team. So I'm at the airport, and I will try and mute when I am not the speakers, but I apologize in advance for the noise.
And you
no problem. We can work around it.
And Julia,
Great.
you have to announce that your son's team won the National Constitution competition.
Okay, yeah, they did win. But the school team has won more than any other school in the entire country. So,
wow. And what school does your son go to?
He's at Lincoln.
Lincoln. Okay. Well, congratulations. That's fabulous.
Thank you. Well, it was an amazing testament to 12 incredible coaches. Very supportive principal and teacher for a Constitution class. But 13 months of hard work by 30-something kids. It was inspiring and quite amazing to see what students are capable of. So, Dick and Kay, I assume you've seen the agenda. The primary content of this meeting is to discuss the evaluation process and timeline, have an update on the scorecard, to speak briefly about the upcoming report to the board, and then from a just administrative standpoint, review the current travel request. Given where I am in the airport, I was asking if Whitney would mind just changing the order to have the scorecard update at the back end. It's time when it's a little bit noisier, and then I can mute. Any objection to that, Kay or Dick?
No,
No.
sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay. So just jump right into the evaluation process and timeline. You all should have received by email a draft timeline and process from Whitney. Did you both get that and have a chance to look at it?
Yes, I did. And I don't have any questions. It seems very reasonable and practical, and I think an August 12th date for findings to be reported to the board seems very timely to me.
Yeah, I do too.
So, is that the meeting that Nancy just flagged that we might cancel, or was that the July meeting?
That's the July meeting that we are likely going to cancel, and this would be at the August meeting, which is going to be a full-day retreat, and so this would be, just one part of it that we could strategically place probably at the end of the retreat or maybe at the beginning, whatever. So that was my thinking, and that would be like a first reading, and then in September they would the board would adopt the findings or do their final action.
Great. So the elements that I thought we should, as a committee, discuss was the timeline. Whether we wanted to modify the stakeholder groups that had been recommended, whether we wanted to add, delete. So stakeholders, then I'd like to hear, Dick and Kay, what you would be interested in terms of your role in this process. And then the last piece needs to be the actual tool that we're going to use for the feedback session. So those are the larger areas. Anybody else have anything they want to add to the list of things for us to discuss in terms of the evaluation?
I don't have anything I want to add.
Yeah, I don't either, Kay. I guess the only comment I have is we're still at the early stages here of the whole new Oregon Investment Board, the whole new way of doing business. We have a new CEO, and so it's I guess I get the evaluation is very, very important. I understand all of that, but a year from now it's going to be if I'm still around, it's going to be a lot more important to me. You know.
Yeah, you probably are making a statement that relates to a question I was going to ask, because oftentimes when in these evaluation processes and we're seeking information from stakeholders, my concern always is whether or not the stakeholders really do have objective criteria by which they're giving us feedback, and that it's not just anecdotal or emotional. And I think that really speaks to the fact that really Nancy hasn't had a lot of time in any one kind of space for, in my view, for her to be effectively evaluated by others. I think we on OEIB have a lot of interaction and contact with her and have some good sense of what she's doing and how she's doing it, but I don't think she's been around long enough for people to have really objective criteria by which to provide feedback and input.
I would really echo that.
One thing we might do, because I think we would be remiss if we didn't at least have a conversation about some elements of it, and I think maybe the context in terms of getting other people's feedback or organizational feedback is that, we have a framework in which we ask it, and then that we look for maybe trends or things that maybe not necessarily used in the evaluation of the look back, but also the look forward. I agree with both of you that we need to be careful, and so it's not just we're compiling external parties with unobjective feedback, but that there will be individuals and organizations who have had interactions with Nancy who will have things that will, I think, be valuable for us to hear, again, for setting the course next year, but also, if there's any emerging trends. For example, if just there's any sort of lack of engagement, or if not substantive engagement, that might be something that just that in and of itself is something we want to have a conversation with Nancy about through this process. But I agree with you. I think, again, it wouldn't form the basis of it, but could inform different aspects of the look back and the go forward.
And I'll just add, and this is Whitney, that I was trying in the tool to make it clear that any feedback that came from different stakeholder groups would be that kind of trend data that would then be synthesized by you all or by the chair, and then kind of reported in a in a paragraph or so on each of the different areas. That's similar to how Julia took the feedback from the forums when we were doing the hiring of Nancy in the permanent position, and ended up kind of condensing it all into a sort of set of generalized trends of how people were feeling. So I think that might be, maybe there would be a way to make it not direct feedback, but a chance for you all to listen to some voices from the outside.
So maybe there's a place to start with. Do we agree that we should seek systemic feedback from the other board members?
Yes. Because I think we are working relatively closely with Nancy and have an impression and have some experience by which we can share information.
Okay. And then what about, Dick, do you agree? I thought I heard a yes.
Yes.
Okay. Then there's a key agency leader input, so I guess I divide that list into sort of people who dotted line reports to Nancy, the Robs, the Bens, and then there's people who are sort of in OEIB and I'm curious, you're thinking about the value of seeking feedback at some level from those two groups of individuals.
It makes obvious sense. The thing that keeps hitting me back, I guess I'm a little bit new to this on a public official like this, but also is the context that the OEIB board is. It should be reviewed. We got a Statesman's Journal here, front page. Says Oregon's grad rate dismal. State is second worst in the nation. So I barely get out of bed, and I got a phone call from a guy that knows I'm on this thing. He said, "What the hell are you guys doing over there?" Blah blah blah. So outcomes is going to be a big thing here.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I'm not sure, maybe this is what we address at the retreat. I'm not sure we're really grappling with those big issues, and to me, that's what the public is wanting us to do.
Exactly right.
I can't remember who it was. It was some official for one of the universities who said, it's not working. And, and I really had to think about that for a long time because I thought, now what is he saying? I'm trying to think who it was. It was in written, I don't know if it was Oregonian, but they said, this governance structure isn't working. And the only conclusion I could draw from that is that there's just some big fundamental issues that concern all of us about what's not happening with our kids that are in public education.
Yeah.
The dropout.
Real or perceived. Say that there's a perception out there. That's the part we're trying to fight against, Kay, just exactly what you described. So that's our job to turn that around.
So I would suggest is I think that's a valid issue to raise. I don't know that is the subcommittee role.
Yeah.
So
I agree with that.
Yeah, so do I.
Board. But maybe Whitney, you can have a conversation with Nancy. It's just an internal team conversation about where the right place for that conversation to happen.
Yes, absolutely, and we've actually been talking about that in terms of the retreat, and really thinking about whether we are looking at the right strategies, how we really sort of refine the strategic plan that was put in place when Rudy was on board, and kind of think about that. So I think it is the right time to do that. I also will be bringing to you at the next full board meeting the OEIB scorecard. And I think that's a place where, it is an important piece for the board to think of it as the scorecard for them, and for us to kind of talk together about, about some of these issues and begin to tee them up. So, but I'll let Nancy know that you're all thinking about that as well, and I think seems really timely for us to dig in on that issue.
So Whitney, do you think just by email you or Nancy could circle back with the committee on that particular point before our next meeting?
Sure, that'd be great.
Okay. So notwithstanding our need to review our own performance as a board, thoughts on that the Rock Saxon, the Ben Cannon, having them participate in providing input into the first year review?
Yeah, I think all of those names are appropriate because they're all individuals that have a regular interaction with Nancy and have some impressions. But I want to go back to the point that we discussed earlier. I think that's what it is, their impressions, because I don't think there's real clear objective criteria that allows any of those individuals to really be able to say, make a comparison based on those criteria. So if we're giving our impressions, if we're looking at trends, if it becomes kind of a summary of everybody's thinking that will be helpful for Nancy as she plans her work plan to go forward. I'm okay with that. But short of that, I don't think will be fair to any of us, and particularly to Nancy, if it's just impressions only of how well she's performing.
Yes, I was just thinking, I agree. You have to forgive me for my age because I can't remember evaluating my coaches.
Well, she technically works for us.
Yeah, exactly. No, exactly. No, we definitely need the dialogue, and it's great constructive thing. And I want to be sure to say that this is a positive thing, and we have a great opportunity here. So, I mean, I still live here, in spite of the inheritance tax. but I love Oregon, and we really want to. So I don't want to be coming across too negative here, but I want us to get the best. And so far, what I've seen, it's really been great as far as her leadership. So yeah, I think we need a dialogue downstream and sideways and all of that. And as we go along, as the scorecard, I love that the way that you stated Whitney said about the scorecard. I mean, not very often do we have real scorecards. We're in a culture where we don't keep score anymore, and this is a case where we need to. So,
not in my world.
Yeah, that's probably why we are where we are, Dan, because we have.
Yeah, exactly.
So I would agree with that group, and I think when we get down to the key stakeholders' input, I think I'd want to be more selective because I really think this is probably the area where you would get into people, being very hit or miss about whether these people have any particular criteria that should be used to provide feedback. So I think I'd want to probably get much more granular in terms of, educators at all levels. Is it somebody who serves on, an educator who serves on the Early Learning Council, for example?
Yeah.
Just an educator, who's in the classroom, their feedback is going to be, probably arm's length and, may or may not be valid.
So, maybe that's a place where we could change what we're asking for from key stakeholder input on Nancy and say key stakeholder input on the progress of OEIB today, which puts us into that same category, and because that's what I'm real interested in is, what are people saying about us? What are people, us meaning OEIB, what are people saying about the direction we're moving in or the progress we are or are not making? To me, if we kind of open that up so it's an evaluation or input on OEIB, we can probably extract from that some information that we can share with Nancy to help her move forward, not to evaluate her, but to help her move forward, and also to help the board move forward. But I'm more interested in what those groups are saying about OEIB and what we are doing or what they believe we should be doing. And I don't know if this is the right place to ask for that, but that, to me, would be much more meaningful to OEIB than having a superintendent say what they think about Nancy, what she is or is not doing.
So this is Whitney, and I just want to put a slight caution out there, and it is related to the kind of political lens and the fact that we'll be moving into the next legislative session having to justify OEIB's existence and get the sunset removed. So just putting that out there, it's a very different thing to do a broad feedback on the performance of OEIB versus some targeted input on an evaluation that's for the purpose of this executive committee. So I think that we would want to think about how to approach something like that, because it could end up not being helpful in the political atmosphere.
Yeah, I think an evaluation that has a framework that's connected to the scorecard that asks the right people for feedback, and then is forward-looking in its sort of coaching or feedback to Nancy, I think is probably the best position for the board to be in heading into the next legislative session. I just think that clearly was what happened before. The part of, I think, the criticism the board not sort of overseeing, managing, directing, coaching the chief education officer. So I think having a process where, keeping in mind that this is sort of year one, but using sort of our scorecard with the right people, and then being forward-looking gives us, and should give Nancy a great platform going forward. So, Kate, can I assume from your comments that if we were going to ask people from that sort of phase 2, the key stakeholder group, that you would suggest a different set of questions that we'd be asking them, and then it'd be summarized differently than, say, board feedback or direct report feedback?
That's what I'm thinking would be most useful, and and I understand what you're saying, Whitney, that something like that has to be crafted very carefully. But and I understand politics. People don't necessarily act rationally, but it just seems like what we're trying to get at is the information we need to help us move forward and begin to move that needle in the direction that we all are concerned about.
Yeah.
And if there's something specific that we could be doing as a board that we've missed, that other people can see, I would really like to know that. And I'm thinking that might be more useful than asking somebody what they think of Nancy's performance at this point in time. Well, we have not articulated the real clear criteria by which they would be giving us that input. But I would think the legislature would want to know that too, not so much in terms of sunsetting or funding, but just in helping us move this public education agenda.
Especially with a new launch.
Yeah.
So, moving into so I think we're going to look at that last group carefully. I think we're probably going to get some feedback from the board at the next meeting on, where we draw the line on the stakeholders. And then I think the last big question would be the chief education officer feedback form, which was sent as well. I don't know if you all had comments on that.
Did we lose you?
Okay, Julia, what was your last comment? You said, did we have comments on what was the last thing that you said?
On the feedback, the specific feedback form that was sent. It's the one with the blank charge.
Yeah, I have it.
Dick, did you have any feedback?
No, I really don't. No, I really don't. I think it's fun.
So, Whitney, the feedback that I would have is I think that you section entitled something like, change leadership or leadership with results. I would change that. I would add like a paragraph of what that means or how we laid that out in Nancy's scorecard, so it's not just a phrase, a little more substance to it. substance to it that we can guide the conversation.
Okay.
Even with other board members. So, what does that mean? When we hired Nancy, what were we thinking on each of those areas? Because I think that way it will, strategic vision across T20 systems. Something, the board's charged the chief education officer with designing or, whatever it is.
Okay.
But that gives, I think, when you get into the conversation with board members, whoever stakeholders, that we're using the same definition and it's more detailed than just a headline.
Great.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
And then Kay and Dick, what role do you want to play in this process? Do you want to do one-on-one interviews with or calls with board meetings? Do you want to do like two of us meet with another board member? I think that might create a quorum. But just curious about what role you'd like to play in the specific evaluation process, interacting with the other board members.
Well, I think probably giving each board member an opportunity for some written input would be step one. And then we should be, the three of us, be able to review that. And then I think we'd have a better idea if we needed to do some person-to-person follow-up, and if so, we could do that one-on-one with board members. But I don't think there's a need for us to interview each board member.
Yeah, I agree totally, specifically because we're at the front end, even though we want to if we need to make corrections or whatever, feedback to Nancy, yes, but with the context of the environment the way we are right now, I think the written feedback and then go from there, ascertain what that is, and then go from there.
Right.
One thing I'd like to ask, Whitney, will you find out for us if we do it in that way, how much of that is a public record?
I will.
So, for example, if they were to submit a feedback form in written format, submit it, even if at a later date that was sort of summarized, is the base document a public record, or is it actually part of Nancy's personnel file that would need to be, in and of itself, a public record?
Yes, I will.
I think that that's a good question to get an answer to, because I remember early on when we asked whether this committee could hold our meetings in confidence, we were told we could not. And that would probably mean that all the information would be public. But I think we should get a DOJ answer to that question.
I will do that.
And I don't see that necessarily as a reason not to do it. I just think if in fact it is a public record, we should just tell people that. So as they, write things, that they're aware of sort of in what form it may eventually, become public.
I'll get that feedback for y'all.
Okay.
Great. So, anything else on the evaluation process?
I had one more thing. This is Whitney. I didn't, and I will take all of your feedback and continue to improve this and send it back out to you all. I didn't do a part of the process that was a self-evaluation for Nancy. I think that could be powerful, but so I just wanted to ask whether you thought that might be one of the pieces of the process that I should build in.
Actually, I think yes. My answer is unqualified yes.
Okay, great.
I like her impression of how she sees herself. Absolutely.
I agree.
Great.
I'm in agreement as well, so good suggestion. So just to move right into the next item, which is the report to the full OEIB. At the May 13th meeting, our committee I'm scheduled to provide a report from the committee, and what I'll do is put together a summary of the work we've done over the last quarter, circulate it to get any of your sort of additions, if I've got a nuance wrong, any edits, so that the report that's provided to the full board on the 13th is reflective of all the committee members. Are you both okay with that?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay. And then, let's see. Whitney, why don't you now take us through, we have one short administrative item. Whitney, why don't we go ahead and do that and then go to the scorecard?
Great.
The administrative item doesn't require approval, but the committee needs to be informed, and Seth, if you're still there, we need to make sure that this is embedded in the meeting minutes.
Yes.
So, thank you, Julia. So, pursuant to the policies that the subcommittee has put in place around Nancy's out-of-state travel, she's required to get approval from you for out-of-state travel. And if you recall last meeting, I brought to you a request for her to travel to Washington, D.C. In May in order to do some conversations with the Federal Department of Ed around our waiver. She has decided not to do that trip, and so I'm just informing you that instead she's going to be using that DC travel in June 30th to also meet with our federal delegation and to attend the Education Commission of the states, to which the governor has appointed her our state representative. So looking at the policy, I don't think there needs to be approval since you've approved a travel to DC within the close time frame, and this is, but this is just for your information and for us to have a clear record of the purpose of the out-of-state travel.
Okay. And then, Whitney, just for the record, as I look at the trip, it appears to be clearly tied into her work and her position, very closely connected from a mission standpoint to our work as a board.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so we could just make sure that the meeting minutes reflect that. I guess my only question I think I would ask that we maybe ask is, and I missed the last board meeting, so this may have already been covered, but was there a reason why Nancy no longer needed to meet with the federal officials at that time?
Deputy Superintendent Saxton was able to go back there a couple of weeks ago and meet with Arnie Duncan on our waiver. And we're getting some very good signals, and so we feel like we're in a prime position to get our waiver approved in short order. So hopefully you'll be hearing about that in upcoming weeks. So Nancy decided she would rather just stay here and keep working and put that trip off until it coincided with this Education Commission of the States meeting.
And Whitney, when she's back there, will she be meeting with our congressional delegation?
I believe we will be working to set that up, either with the delegation or at least with some key staffers.
Yeah, just going back to Kay and Dick's comment about sort of the external world and influencers who impact public education in the state. I was with the congressional delegation, in that sort of tier one group that we want to be closely communicating with them on a regular basis. And I think it's a great opportunity for Nancy if she's back there to sort of continue the conversation with them, let them know what our sort of goals, where we're heading, because I think they can be important influencers in the in-state conversation.
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
So, Whitney, last item on the agenda, the scorecard update.
And then just really quickly before I go to that, there was also a document in your packet that is titled Boards and Commissions Best Practices Measure. And I just wanted you to have this. I think in coming months, I'll be bringing to you some ideas of how we could do a self-assessment of the board that meets this measure. This is required by the legislature for every board. So one of the reasons that we are doing the executive director annual performance examination is because it's required by the legislature. So I just wanted you to have it, and then we'll revisit it in coming months to talk about how to apply it to the OEIB. So
That was really interesting to see. Thanks for sharing that with us.
yes. Good. Okay. Well, I will go ahead and jump into the Chief Education Officer quarterly scorecard. And this is the scorecard that you saw last quarter as well. And the way that we've formatted it is to kind of be a rolling update that you can use to both see what's coming in the next quarter, but also and to see what came last quarter, and then to see where we're at this quarter. And this is a scorecard that's organized around the Chief Education Officer's primary roles. So I will just skip to a couple of places on the scorecard that I wanted to draw your attention to, and then I'm happy to talk through any other places on the scorecard where you had interest. So the first piece, and in the status column you'll see on the end, there's also a rolling status so that you can see places where the status has changed from yellow to green or green to yellow, so we can kind of key in on areas where things are either going fast on track or we're have a little bit of need for attention. So the first page at the bottom on the longitudinal data system business case, we were able to update the status of that project to a green based on the legislature's approval of our initial presentation on that. I think you all saw Peter Tromba present that to the OEIB. And the legislature has sort of signed off on us moving to the next stage of that. So we've updated that to a green. That's one of the key deliverables, obviously, for the Chief Education Officer. Jumping to page 2 of the report card, we have, Nancy has downgraded the status on that first item, which is the OEIB board engaged, informed, and focused. And this was really based on a reflection that we want to just keep as the Chief Education Officer and her staff, we want to keep working on making sure that the OEIB meetings are engaging, that we're being responsive to the comments like the one you made earlier, Kay, about, are we really looking at the right things? And so this is a focus area for us in the next quarter. The next item is the policy and research unit. It's one where we're still at a yellow. Oh,
Whitney?
yes.
One thing just on that just an observation, it might be when Nancy is doing something that connects to either a particular committee or individual board members' interests or their geographical location, for her to just reach out if there's an interest for the board to join her at something other than a board meeting. For example, she visited Jefferson High School the other day, and I can't recall what the purpose was. But if, say Nicole and, the members of that committee, if it was around a topic that relates to sort of some of the equity and partnership work, just inviting board members to actually see things in action. I know Nancy has an opportunity to get out in the field a lot. So maybe the interaction just isn't at board meetings, which tends to be, for example, for me, that's not the best way for me to learn. So maybe mixing it up a little bit. I know if she went to Eastern Oregon, she'd certainly be asking, Mark, or probably connecting with him. But to think a little bit about maybe how to do that in other communities, on other issues, or around board members with specific areas of expertise or interest.
That is a fantastic idea, Julia. And I know that Kristen has kind of been working through her communications plan to try to have us be more proactive on things like this. But I love the way that you described that, and I think I will definitely pass that on to Nancy, and we'll begin to get in that routine of extending those opportunities, because I agree with you. It's the best way to both understand the scope of the issues, but also just get a chance to see the way that community reacts to Nancy, which is overwhelmingly positive.
But it also helps, though, with the selling point, if that's using my terminology, the education of the education of educating the general public the importance of this. But what was just said, though, is it makes the Curry County child and the Malheur County child and the Multnomah County child just as important. And,
Exactly.
And, and forgetting about the population base and all the votes and all this kind of stuff. So I think it's really a win-win there to do that.
Wonderful. I'll just quickly touch on a few more. So the OEIB Policy and Research Unit, which is the second row down on page 2, we are still in the process of being fully staffed. With the departure of David Edwards, we put Peter Tromba in place. Peter and I are doing interviews for some research assistants, and we're really moving to get that unit up and operational. But we've identified it as yellow just to make sure that we're paying good attention there. And I think that's actually, at the top of page 3, there was another change. And this is around the implementation of the strategic investments that you've heard so much about through ODE and out in the field. And this is a place where we've gone from a yellow to a green. I think almost all of the money is out the door, and plans have now moved to really identifying how we examine those investments and figure out what places that we're really getting good return, what are the spots where we're going to see some really powerful outcomes, how do we connect the recipients of those investments with each other so that we can create some learning across different entities. And so that work is really in a very positive spot, I think. So those were the pieces I had to highlight, but please take a moment and feel free to ask any questions you have on any other elements.
Have you had, or you or ODE had any feedback on the process that was used to do the RFPs and make decisions? Everything I've heard, I want you to know, has been very positive. So I hope you're getting that kind of feedback. People felt like they were well informed and it was an inclusive process.
That's fantastic. I think we've gotten a lot of feedback, and we've compiled a lot of learning, and a lot of it is positive, but there's a lot to improve on as well. But I think it's really, it just speaks very highly for the staff Rob has, and that they've really been able to put those investments all in place and are very open to learning how to do it, even more effectively in the next biennium. And we're going to be asking the Equity Subcommittee to do some work to help us even identify more places in the RFP processes and in the other processes where we can do even better in terms of making sure that we have an equity lens applied. So, but thank you, I appreciate that.
In response to your question, I don't see any other area where I would want to give any input on the scorecard. I think you've been clear about where we've moved from a yellow to a green or where we need to do more. Yeah, I don't have any additional input on the card itself.
No, not at all. I just like the terminology of the scorecard.
That's a report card.
That's what you get when you work with Nike.
Yeah, exactly.
Anything else on the scorecard?
Nope, that's it.
I think we've moved through all our agenda items. Anything else for the good of the order?
Not for me.
Everything's okay.
Seth?
Nope.
Great, okay. So thank you everybody for bearing with me with the noise in the background and for efficiently moving through the process and the committee's work. I will send out a draft summary for that will be the report to the full board for you to look at. Appreciate your feedback, and Whitney, if you'll get back to us, circle back with us, those items we asked for, that'd be perfect.
I will.
Okay, with that, the meeting's adjourned.